Welcome to the Tattoo Teacher Podcast, Dr. Nick Jackson. I appreciate you taking your time. A little bit of an intro for you. Please don't be embarrassed. This is what I found about you so far. So currently, you are the leader of digital technologies at Scotch College in Adelaide. You have worked in education for over 20 years now in both universities and schools. You love researching and working with teachers. You tend to focus on how to empower access across education, especially in the digital space. Your current specialties include educational technology, AI in education, e-learning, online learning, computing, digital technologies, and a whole range of other things along those lines. So welcome, Dr. Jackson.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. It's good to be here. Good to see you, Phil, and nice to be sort of virtually in your workshop. I feel like I'm sort of in a worker's space. I feel sort of underwhelmed that I don't really have any tools behind me, but I've got to live the dream somehow, haven't I?
Well, we got to do it. We got to do it. It's one of my only spaces left in the house, so that I can get down and make a mess. But hey, look, I do appreciate you taking your time, and you are, as I said, you're currently down in Adelaide, but you don't sound like someone who's from Adelaide originally.
No, I'm from the north of England. I'm from Yorkshire originally. I emigrated here about 12 years ago. And that was a result really of quitting teaching after only 4 years of teaching in 2004 to 2006. I quit teaching and went backpacking around the world. So not in the gap year sort of tradition as an old fogey sort of traveller in a way. So post-30s traveller. So with a bit more money than the average bod. So I was not sleeping on the scummy mattresses. I was giving me aircon and cable TV, and I'll pay double the price. But that was my sort of travelling. But I still went to those far and wide places. Twice around the world. First time on my own, a bit with a friend, and second time with a girlfriend that I'd actually left behind who became my wife. And what we found when we went back to England after that was we had a craving to live by the beach. And cut a long story short, here we ended up in Adelaide because that seemed like the ideal place to come and live that dream. And 12 years later, we're still here. We live by the beach and living that dream, and found that Adelaide is one of those special places in the world that not many people realise exists and offers a lifestyle that we love. But has also, in more recent years, evolved into sort of a special place in the digital world, especially with the generative AI and the developments in there and what it's allowed to happen or facilitated happening in some ways. That autonomy, that freedom, and that approach to generative AI that is probably not seen anywhere in the world, which offers really interesting opportunities.
Yeah, I've noticed that from here. I'm up on the Gold Coast, and we see a lot of tech stuff happening. A lot of companies migrating to their bases to Adelaide. Tesla built their first major battery storage facility down there. And yeah, just more and more is moving down to what seems to be becoming the tech capital of Australia. So you seem like you're in your key position.
Yeah, it's very interesting you have that perspective because there is some of that, but there is some sense of a bit of a parochial attitude sometimes to that, and a bit of a disconnect between that part of Adelaide and the rest of Adelaide, if that makes sense. So we've got the National Space Agency here. We have a number of startups here, tech startups, as you talk about those Industry 4.0 sort of players, those kind of things, with Mitsubishi factories closing down and how they've been replaced. If you go to like the Tonsley precinct here, fascinating ecosystem there that I've never seen anywhere else that's happened there. And yeah, when you get involved with those people and you see what's happening and you see these startups that exist, 99.9% of Adelaide really doesn't know that they exist at all. And there is a huge disconnect between that element of the society here and the rest of society, even in education terms, 99% of teachers don't know that these places exist, or don't partake in bringing these people on board, or letting their kids be exposed to that. It's almost like they walk past it. It's in the middle of the city. You could walk past Stone and Chalk on North Terrace, or the National Space Agency, or the Institute of Machine Learning, and it's just there, and people don't even know it's there. And I was like, how strange is that in such a small city? So yeah, you talk about those things from the outside, but when you're here, unless you're willing to partake with them and willing to get involved and willing to seek that out, you would quite happily exist both as a teacher, as an educator, as an average person within Adelaide, and not know that that's actually there.
So it's an interesting perspective, I guess. Yeah, being on the ground as such. Yeah, you see that. Yeah, it's Adelaide's. I haven't been to Adelaide since the late 80s, so I dare say it's changed quite a bit since then. I was a young teenager, so it's yeah, I definitely wouldn't have been looking for the space agency. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'd probably say that if you came, you'd probably go, yes, it has, but no, it hasn't. It's still got that sort of feel to it that it's a small city, and or a big country town in some ways. But then there's these elements like I've just talked about there, that bring a different dimension to them. But you could quite happily not know they were there. And I suppose this is something that really has always concerned me, is how much, regardless of where you work, how much does education work within a bubble? How much do you actually know what's going on outside of your school, and how much can you expose your kids to that gives authenticity to things that they could look for beyond, I want to go to university, or I want a gap year, or I want a job. What different versions are there of that sort of those choices, of those lifestyles that they think exist?
Yeah, it's I guess that's probably very similar to most students across probably Australia and the globe. So we do what's available. Up here on the Gold Coast, it's like, do you have a lot of trades, but then there's a lot of tourism. So there's the hospitality industry, but then there's we got some great universities that their health programs are world class. So yeah, I guess it's where your attention lies, and where your passions are. So speaking of passions, so you travel the world, but I heard a little early told me that you happen to be a DJ. Is that still one of your passions?
Yeah, I was a DJ for a number of years, so that started at university. This is I suppose you're allowed to talk about the rave days now as if that was a cool thing to be involved in. For a long time it was taboo. Oh, don't mention those days, like hedonism. So yeah, during those days, so I happened to be at university when the rave scene exploded in Britain, and was a part of that scene, and yeah, got the chance to partake in DJing, producing music. It didn't quite go the way I intended it to be. I wanted to make a living out of it, and then it all sort of got very commercialized and very much about cool clubs. And as you can probably gather by the way I look, cool clubs is not really me. I could tell some stories of turning up sometimes. Oh, turning up at one time, and the bouncers on the door saying like, "You can't come in here, mate. You're not dressed right." And me going, "Well, if I don't come in, there'll be no music tonight, so you've got a choice." Yeah. So yeah. So it didn't go the way I intended. I wasn't willing to live that sort of lifestyle that was wanted. The move to London, all that kind of thing. But yeah, some great times, and still have an interest in music, both live music bands and also electronic music as well, and seeing DJs, and I'm very much interested now in curating music and putting music together, and digital music, as well as I say, as well as live instruments and people who play in a traditional way, but all sorts of genres of music. So I always had a fascination around that sort of crossover between natural talent and digital talent, and digitally enhanced versions of media. I'm always very interested in that. So I suppose it's the same interest I have in. I like to watch movies, and I like to analyze them in respect of the power that they have over people and what sort of emotions they can bring in people, as well as just being entertained, but also being fascinated by the sort of special effects that happen. So always multi-layered in the emotions that I feel from media. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, some of my favorite bands coming out of the UK, and so yes, I spent the racing not so much here, but there were a few parties that I wandered into over the years, but
Wandered
yeah.
into, that's a good description. I like that. Yeah.
Well, again, you can't holds too much of our educators, so
Yeah, I mean, in the recent Adelaide Fringe, there was a VR opportunity within that, and it's something that's been curated. I'm trying to think what it was called. Oh, it was called In Search of Repetitive Beats. And what they've done is they've actually captured the rave scene in the UK and put it through a VR experience. And I went and had a go with that, and that was awesome because it really did do a quite sophisticated job of putting you back there, but it also did really well at telling stories. And, in that sort of medium, to do it in VR is quite difficult, but it was done really well, put together by Darren Emerson, a DJ, and some of the people from the time. So that was quite interesting to experience that. So it shows that, even those underground scenes with different kind of media and different kind of approaches can be brought to life. And that was awesome to partake in that.
yeah, it seems that music. I mean, just like we'll stay on that track a little bit. That music definitely is becoming the art form again. I think it got lost for a little while. Maybe
Sure.
still is for definitely some people. But what brought that to light is, and you've probably seen it as well, is the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
That is now they created that one album. They
Yeah.
put it on a CD. They destroyed the digital master. I heard the story on ABC radio this morning. So they destroyed the master. Some crooked US pharmaceutical guy bought it. He lost everything. It got sold, and it's now down at Mona in Tasmania. That's going to be released in June. And you can buy tickets to hear 30 seconds of basically unheard music.
Yeah, it goes back to that whole question of originality, doesn't it? And being protecting your IP in an age where tangible assets are not really worth anything. It sort of speaks to that, doesn't it? And does this start to show? Because ultimately, people are out to make money, aren't they? Record companies, those kinds of things. And so, is this showing them a different approach to ways to make money, which means that they will promote more originality, more one-offs, more unique pieces of artwork in respect of music and in respect of media, that we will see a different spin-off like we've seen with resurgence of vinyl and how important that physical form is to people. And yeah, I like to think that it's good that you bring music into it, because I like to think that music speaks to us in terms of the way it's evolved and changed and gone from being this horrible thing that was just Simon Cowell. There's no other way to explain it, is it? That's the era. And really, in a way, I watched my kids grow up just going like, what are you being exposed to here? This is just horrible. It's just watered down thing. And then I'm thinking, am I just an old man that's down on the latest pop music, that's just going, that's horrible. It's nothing like it was in the old day. But it really was quite putrid, a lot of it, and much of it still is. But then we have the revival of these scenes, these underground scenes, in different ways, and also the mashing together of different genres and different sounds, and then the resurgence of festivals in different ways, and those becoming more accessible. And then, as you say, then this latest connotation is this idea of going, oh, perhaps we can have these things that are taken out of people's hands and become one-off things. And that creates a totally different market and a different demand. And what does that say to us about the way that people worry about commoditization of, the ability to be able to create text instantly with AI, or be able to use image generators and things like that, and go, that's going to mean the death of art. It's going to mean the death of photography. And you just go, Really? Well, it's not really happened with music. Just look at music as an example, and nothing's ever killed anything off really, unless it's not needed by us or not wanted by us. And in art forms, there's still people doing portrait paintings just because somebody came along and took pictures. So why does everybody think that, oh, we're not gonna want that anymore? You know, people still cherish creative art forms in different ways. You know, some people will still love a marching band, and other people will still love to go to a live gig, and some people will want to sit at home and watch a hologram DJ. Whatever you choose to do, you know, people are still going to want to make those choices. So I'm always I'm always looking for those examples to go like, why do you think that it's always like Terminator in life? It's not. That's not the way society's ever gone. Why do we think that's going to happen now? You know, in respect of creative art form. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting example, and let's see if that spawns different things, or does it somehow die away and then come back again, which tends to happen as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I mean, we've discussed both our passion for music, and there's something, music and art, and there's something that gives a response that, to a certain extent, the with some of the discussions on AI. I think that some of the art that is being generated digitally is amazing. I can see the skill and the talent to actually produce. Yes, there's rubbish, but there's some amazing, talented artists there to create these vivid images that
Mm.
could not be made prior. But then, I shared something a while ago. I went to a gallery exhibition, and there was just a visceral response of being in there and seeing this tangible artwork that someone has put in so many hours into. But it's not that I appreciated the digital art less. It's just that at this point in time, I appreciated the physical art maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, a lot of those things swim around in my head. I did a keynote last year on, or was it? Yeah, I think it was last year on to Visual Arts Association talking, and did a lot of research and looked at the whole idea of how when photography came about, it was 100 years before photography became accepted as an art form, which was just stunning. So for 100 years, people going, that's not art, that's not art. Just think of that now. You know, now we go like, you would never think like that. So yeah, hopefully this doesn't last 100 years before we accept AI as an art form. I think the major difference is that unlike a camera, to actually create Ansel Adams type images or whatever photography you hold, you put on a pedestal to be very good as creating photography as an art form, that they've got a certain skill with a camera. They understand aperture. They understand all those kinds of techniques, and you would struggle to get anything like what they can produce. The difference is with generative AI. If you're anything like me, you're not going to spend. Oh, you've already spent hours and hours on Midjourney and got really frustrated. So now you just go and take other people's prompts and slightly change them and get something like that. Oh yeah, I like that. So, so unlike the actual skill involved in using a camera and get it to produce something decent, although smartphones have taken us closer to that. With generative AI, you can get very, very high quality images by ripping off other people's prompts. So in a way, what's that going to mean in the future? Is that going to mean that some of these generative AI artists actually hold on to their prompts like they're gold dust? Do you see what I mean? Is that gonna be the most sacred thing, to them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting way to look at it. I've not sort of thought about it in that way, but yeah, it's their IP, it's their copy, it's their watermark on their image, is their creative thought. And I mean, I had a discussion with a year 9 art student. I'm teaching visual arts at the moment, and she was like, "No, AI is evil. Can't use it. It just steals everyone's art." And I'm just like, "Well, AI itself, no, not evil. Yes, people are doing the wrong thing with it. Some people are doing the wrong thing with it, but and but then I've got another kid in another class who's going, "Sir, I'm putting a large language model on my phone, and then it's doing this," and I'm just like, So, are you seeing or hearing conversations like that in your educational sphere?
I wouldn't say that about I know anybody that's put it on the phone, but we've definitely got that disparate sort of attitude. And yes, I have taught some kids. There was a girl last year who was doing an AIF project, which is our new research project, where basically kids can choose to do any project they want. And she was doing Japanese manga, and she's totally anti-AI because of the same reasons you said there. Believes that it's ripped off the artists, and you can't argue against that. I don't really have many arguments against that at all. And then I have a student digital ambassador who sits there with ChatGPT open all the time throughout a whole school day and at home, and it's a constant digital companion. She uses it, I would argue, even more than I do. So she's sat there in lessons, but she's using it responsibly. She's not plagiarizing. She's top grade student, over and above. Just won a service award for 7 years service to Cancer Council. She's that kind of student, does everything, does sport, does all those kinds of things. So, this is a prime example of somebody that can take this tool and understand how it's going to benefit her and use it going forward, more so than most employees and most professionals out there. She's fully understanding this, and in fact, she delivers PD now. I put her in that position because to see her do it is inspirational. So yes, we have got those and everything in between. And yeah, even despite the way we've done at our school, we've still got kids who are plagiarizing. If you're going to talk about plagiarizing in terms of just copying and pasting from output, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's been the big argument, I think, since November of 2022.
Yeah.
It's a cheating machine, and I'm just I've been around education, as a teacher for over 20 years now, but I went through schooling, and I'm not too dissimilar, I would say, as the average student who would go, what, especially the average teenage boy who was like, I just can't be asked doing this project.
Exactly.
I'm going to go down to the library. I'm going to copy out this. I'm going to change a few words, and it's my assignment. There you go. And the teachers know you, and they know that's just rubbish. Same thing with generative AI is they know what you're capable of, especially when you get back US studying on a Australian assignment.
But I think if you turn that on its head and you start to go, okay, in my capacity now and in your capacity, you're not really going to do that unless it's some low level thing in your job. So say it's report comments or it's some policy you've got. You probably do it for a policy because who really cares? But if it's something you care about, you're not going to do that with. So in a professional capacity, I think it then changes. And what I've seen in just a book that I've just written that's about to get published is my workflow, my way of operating with this technology significantly changed. And it's significantly changed not only in the way I work, but also the environments that I work in. So to explain that is that instead of sitting there and typing in a laptop, a PC, which you typically would if you were writing a book, and take that back a few years, that would have been a typewriter. Take it back another few years, that would have been a pen. Take it back another few years, a quill, and we can keep on going. But those environments change, don't they, based on as the technology develops, typewriter to the. But there's a significant change, I would argue, when you bring generative AI tools into the mix, because suddenly your dimensions can change. So for me, I found myself in different, not all the time, when writing, and I say writing in quotes, writing this book, of walking on the beach on a Saturday morning with my phone in my hand, the dog's running about, and I'm speaking into the phone, and an AI transcriber is listening to what I'm saying. I'm coming back to the house. I've spewed out all these brain farts, thoughts, sometimes more coherent than other times, sometimes just a train of thought, whatever. I've come back. I've then looked at what I'd said. I've then edited that. I might mash that together with a few other things. I might get AI then to summarize some of the points. I might get AI to do other things, or I might do it myself and bits of all sorts. And then I'll still further edit that to be my writing. So does that make it more efficient? Probably not. but it's a completely different way of working. And I would argue it's even the environment in which I'm then working in changes perhaps the way I think, the way I would operate. You know, when you're walking on a beach on a sunny morning, it's got to be different than sat in a room focusing. Do you see what I mean? That environment's got to affect what you do, surely. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I know that, yeah, different environments affect me differently. I mean, I use AI, as you know, a lot, and it's changed the way I produce writing. Like
Mm,
I've not had, like, I'm not an English major.
mm,
I'm not that. I wasn't, I was rather, high school was a social experiment for me. So I missed a lot of those building blocks that help create those skills to write later in life. But what I found is I can throw down a thought and help, and whatever language model I'm using helps me expand or explore that
mm,
thought. Then it produces something, and then I can go, that's not what I think, and then I can talk to it, and I can get it
mm.
back, and then I can edit, and then I get something that sounds like me, that has my heart, my essence, and my capabilities within it. But it's something that prior to this, was never able to do.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? So I talked about environment. You've talked about some sort of opening up of skills or capacity there, you know. So we've got environment, we've got different skill set, we've got capacity, we've got probably confidence as well, because I feel I'm able to just blab in that respect. You'll feel that you're able to have the tool, you know, bring out more of your ability to explain yourself or to elicit your ideas into something that you feel confident to publish out there. And I think those are the things, and there's more of those things, isn't there? I mean, we're just citing a couple examples there, but I think we have to try and understand that technology is invasive as this and disruptive as this and so powerful. And we're not just talking about chatbots. I'm talking about AI transcribers. We've talked about image generators. We'll be talking about video to text and text to video and go and so on and so forth. As we go on from here, this whole genre, this whole ecosystem that we will live in and live with will just grow and grow, and the ways that we will use this technology and how it will affect the ways we do traditional things and the sort of things that we don't even dream that we can do or have done traditionally, then that's just going to expand in many different ways. And I think what it does is, when we talk about that idea of going, well, it democratizes education, or those kinds of things. I mean, I know they're very broad terms, but if you look at it like that, what it does is it enables people. It's enabled you in certain ways. It's enabled me in other ways. It enables you to do certain things in ways that you choose, which has surely got to make those things more accessible. If you don't like writing and you can talk and it can transcribe for you, or you found yourself not being able to explain yourself, but you have these ideas in your head, well, surely that's got to be democratizing in a way. It's got to be enabling, hasn't it? So I just think that makes it so exciting and so powerful, and not like anything we've seen before. We're not talking about just being able to point a camera at someone and take a picture as opposed to painting the picture. We're talking about being able to do that in X number of ways, in the way we function, and that to me is just the ultimate in the way we'll progress going forward, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, you and I, we're very, we see the benefits. We also understand that the pitfalls and the challenges of what we're talking of, generative AI. But why do you think that there are so many educators that just have gone, no, that's it. I'm not touching that. I don't want part of it. I think it's going to destroy education. Is that because they've just been beat up by too many tech companies, or
Yeah.
what do you think it might be?
Phil, just today, I think I could have answered that question in 20 different ways just today. Just in people I've talked to today, things I have seen today, honestly, I'm serious. From a meeting with people in tech today, some tech suppliers who work with our school, sat there and listening to, their experiences going around and seeing the different access to technology all around Australia and the inequity that exists. Them talking about the reality that Australian curriculum's not even being delivered really in the whole of Australia. It doesn't really exist as we think it does or what it's portrayed to be. To them talking about still the lack of fundamental skills and fundamental knowledge of how to integrate the most basic of technology, from an interactive whiteboard to BYOD to anything like that. Then what did I see? Half an hour before I came to talk to you tonight, seeing Facebook groups, people talking about, I'm 5 years off retirement, so I think I'll just not bother with this. That sort of attitude, to other people in the same chat going, what is this ChatGPT thing? I'm like, what? Sorry, where have you been? Is this an alien that's just landing from Mars? So, if we look at all these different elements, then you can't answer that in one thing. I'd have to provide a list. I'd have to provide it. And it's a mix of all sorts, and it depends on where you go and which school you're working with and which teacher you're talking to. So it's a mix of everything from confidence to being overworked to, having to deal with 50,000 other things, to not being willing to invest, to not knowing how to invest, to not knowing where to start, to having started and then fallen over, to fear, to the media. A big mess.
Yeah. And it seems as though that people are looking at it, and there's the clickbait, there's the news stories that it's an existential threat, and there's this and there's that, and so I think in the current in the recent past of everything that educators have gone through, in that just that massive shift to no, you got to be at school, and everything's got to be handwritten, to sorry, to the next 3 years you're going to be digital. You got to transfer everything. And that was a challenge, and I know that has stressed teachers to, for many of them beyond their limits. It's where there's teachers leaving in droves, and then there's just so much going on. And I think, probably maybe just one of the biggest things that I've heard from conversations, teachers is, I just don't have the energy to invest into something new.
Yeah,
I've got my workflow, and I'm just going to do that.
Yeah, energy is an interesting one, isn't it? Energy, and then you followed it up with that sentence. I've got my way of doing things, because I've heard that from my eldest daughter. She's in year 12, and she said that. Well, I've been getting A's without using this. Why would I bother using that? And what am I supposed to say? Well, your future's going to depend on it. No, what year 12 cares about that? Most year 12 go like, I'm performing how I want, and then I'm having a good time. Why should I care about the future? As if we cared about the future at 17 and 18 years old, well, who cares? So, yeah, it's an interesting debate, isn't it? And trying to shift mindsets and convince people that this is not just another tech fad, it's not just another thing, it is vitally important. That's another layer to this. But I think you have to work within context and understand and try and allay as many of those fears as possible, and try and get people to understand that, as we just talked about there, that the game is totally different here. The technology brings with it so many different layers of complexity that it's not the same as just sticking laptops in front of kids. But it does come with some of the same issues as sticking laptops in front of kids, in that you've got to understand that it puts, the teacher in a difficult position in somewhat by putting a laptop screen in front of between them and a kid. It creates its own issues. This creates several layers of issues on top of that. So there are some similarities in some ways, but a whole raft of other issues as well on top of that. So I don't have an easy answer for that. I don't think anybody does. And I think one of the biggest, or another one of the issues we see is that there's a lot of people purporting to have simple solutions to this. Oh, I've got an AI lesson generator for you. Okay. And it doesn't solve anything, and that snake oil salesman approach, those people purporting to be able to solve everybody's AI problems. That doesn't help us at all. I mean, I think we need to get through that sort of era and get rid of some of those sort of players before we see the wood for the trees. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I've noticed is, look at this latest shiny thing. This platform, this chatbot, this generator.
Yes.
This will do all your work and so much more. Yet my biggest concern about those, and look, I've tried a few of them, and yes, they produce the work that we can do. And look, I've used it and it's been quite helpful with I mean, I've done most of the prompting to get what I want. But one of my fears is and I've been teaching, like yourself, we've been teaching a long time. We know our craft, we know our subject matter. So we know when this stuff produces something that is not correct. One of the fears I have is the new teachers who are coming through won't know what's right and what's almost right.
Yeah, that thing about lived experience, that thing about prior knowledge and the value of being confident in what you do and what you know, regardless of whether we're talking about teachers or students. I think that piece right there is a real interesting area to look at, because we are looking at it with biased eyes, aren't we? We are looking at the situation that exists, as you just said, with years of experience, with trusting what we know and how to do things. In other words, we are using this technology, expecting certain things and knowing what we want out of it. But if it's somebody who doesn't know what they want out of it, what does that mean? Because if you're looking at the whole idea of critical thinking and being able to trust the output, but you don't have the lived experience or the knowledge to know what the output or where the trust should be, what's the thing you actually expect, or what level you have up here of knowing what to expect, then how does that affect things? So, we can ideate with a chatbot, but realistically, we know probably that 50% of the ideas it's going to come up with you've already thought of. So it's the other 50% you're looking at, little curveballs, little tweaks to what you know. But if it's somebody who knows nothing, 100% of what he outputs is going to be different. So how many of them are going to be useless? You're going to know that if a chatbot outputs ideas to you, you're going to be able to throw away a certain amount of them, because you'll go, well, that's not going to work, and that's going to cost too much money, and that's going to take too much time, and that really never works. I've tried that before in 1984 and it fell to pieces. Kids won't be engaged with that. But if somebody doesn't know those things, that critical thinking becomes a different thing altogether, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's. I mean, I'm big on critical and creative thinking. It's one. I teach design, so it's something that is key to my subject matter. But it's how do you teach that? How do you get that? How do you when stuff is just popping out here? Well, I've got no idea because I don't have the experience. So
how do you deal with that in a DT then? If you're using a chatbot to ideate, are you making the kids ideate first and then ideate with a chatbot, or ideate alongside a chatbot, or with the chatbot first? And then how do you deal with the fact that it may suggest something, but that the kid doesn't know that that's unworkable?
It's a challenge, and sometimes it's a combination of all of that. Sometimes, I let them have sort of I structured and I put some guidelines with the chatbot, so it would just keep them in that directed path. But even their limited experience, they were asking. I said, just ask it anything about design, ask it anything about the project we're doing, and even with their limited experience, and this is with the Year 12 students, they were like, "This is not right."
Oh,
it's
interesting.
sort of right, but they knew from their limited experience of Year 7 to Year 12 design that what this was giving was there was some errors in it. We like to call them hallucinations. But it's a challenge, and I think to do this in the classroom and to do it well, it's going to take time. It's not going to be a one-off answer.
But I think you just touched on something there that made me think right then, is that the research shows that young people's minds below the age of around 13, and this is why a lot of the social media sites don't legally don't allow young people on before the age of 13, because research shows that they're not able to critically think about, the old idea, the socialization, the old idea about social media works. They're not basically mature enough to be in control of their actions in an online space. Of course, it's a generalization, but that's what research shows. So if we're looking at that being accurate, perhaps going forward, that's something we're going to have to consider in an AI space, is at what point are students able to critically analyze and critically think about the output? You've just said your year 12s are able to do that. It makes you wonder if the year 11s would be, the year 10s would be, the year 9s would be. So there may be points, or there may be different levels here, because they don't have that prior knowledge, they don't have that lived experience, they don't have that capacity to critically think. Or maybe with more education coming in, they'll get better at that. So that will, make them more mature in those respects. And maybe there's some research into the neuroscience behind this that enables us to make decisions as to when is the right sort of age when students should be using these sort of tools at the level that we're using them, or at all. I don't know. That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I was just listening to something the other day. They're talking about that with there's the mobile phone ban in schools currently. I agree with certain parts of it. I don't like blanket bans, but that's just my viewpoint. And it's one of those things where it's like, I get they're a huge distraction. But this thing I was listening to, the research into it was some of these students, or in general teenagers, shouldn't be getting phones till they're 14, 15, 16. Or if they're getting phones, they should be dumb phones. And a lot of parents give their children phones for safety reasons. There's public transport, there's sport, they stay late at school, etc., etc. So give them the phone that can make the call, can receive the call, can send the text. Doesn't need the app. And we all know that there's a lot of neuroscience research into why the apps look the way they do and why they make the sounds and all that sort of stuff. So it's an interesting landscape that we're moving in, and we're only finding out more of the long-term devastation for some of social media 20 years after it was released. Do you think that's going to be the same with AI, or is it because at the moment people are asking questions about what's this going to do? Do you think that will reduce or?
Yeah, I think again, another layer of complexity, another layer of mess, because regardless of the fact that I've just talked about, that issue with social media and FOMO, and being able to deal with things at a certain age, and with two teenage girls, I live that. I constantly live that every day.
Yeah.
Snapchat being the main issue. I constantly live that issue. And being in a school where we see that issue all the time. I just did a parent session last week for year 7 parents at my school, talking about all these issues. I've just seen emails today about year 5s, year 6s. So, we're starting to see it trickle down to a younger age now of online chat group, all these complexities that go on. And this happens everywhere. So there's no if. AI is going to base itself within mobile technology. There's no doubt about that, because that's where the market is. We as old people may sit on PCs and laptops and those kinds of things, but that really is not the big market for these technologies. It's not at all. So if they're going to invade people's lives, which they're going to aim to do, then in different ways, we see Meta across their platforms and their AI, which is half decent and only going to get better and better. Then that idea of a personal device and that idea of AI becoming a more personalized mechanism, something that assists you, something that knows you, something that knows all your content on your phone, if it's linked to an iOS on a phone or equivalent on a non-Apple phone, then you're going to see that dependence and that requirement to be using that mobile technology increase. So I think we're going to have more tension in the use of mobile technology within education and more demand for that. And how we're going to navigate that, I'm not really quite sure. The Japanese have had a big market for those dumbed down phones, as you talked about, but that's not for those reasons. That's for the reasons of having multiple phones. That's the way that they often have multiple phones. I've got this phone for work, this phone for home, and so they have different phones for different uses, or they did when I was there anyway. So maybe there will be the markets that evolve for that, but I can't see that happening anytime soon because a smartphone seems to be the thing that we enjoy and the thing that young people want, and the demand's high and the price comes down. But we've also got to understand as well that phones will disappear and they'll be replaced by smarter technology, by wearable technology, by me and you wearing glasses. I have no doubt at all that I won't be wearing headphones going forward from here, because the audio will be in the glasses here. I'll be able to visualize the screen in front of me on top of this layer, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you talk with glasses and audio. A friend of mine bought a pair of those letters, and he goes, like, have a look at these, try these out. And like, obviously, they weren't my prescription, but just I watched some video that he recorded from the glasses on his phone. It was amazing. Put the music on, put the sound on, was able to take photos and listen to whatever I wanted to listen to.
Interesting.
And it was, I was quite astounded by the ease of use. The sound quality was amazing for what it was. So it's it doesn't have the audio quality of a really good quality headphone or earbud, but for something that's just sitting right there, amazing. So
so imagine that with AI capabilities on top of that. So you'd be able to chat to it, or it'd be able to read it'll be doing facial recognition from your, perhaps a camera scanning your own face, or looking for physical movements in your face, or reading your body temperature, or, looking for spikes in, are you excited, are you scared, and then coaching you through it. And I don't know, I mean, I'm just plucking at straws, but you just can't see where this, it's limitless, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then you see with people wearing glasses, and maybe they won't be able to fix our eyesight, but they'll put the lenses in. But then they'll be adapted to, I'm looking at a bit of paper and it's telling, I don't need to search the internet. It's giving me, and it's just like, how does that factor into education? How does that factor into keeping, IP for, some of these companies, they've got tremendous things. I don't want you walking through with a pair of glasses.
But just look at that, think of it, reading it, and it's their audio summarizing, because that's how you've set it up. It's audio summarizing, or putting it, speak to it like a 10-year-old. It's doing that, so it's explaining the concept to you. You watch a medium, it's able to tell you anything about, the director of that movie, the samples that are in that track that you're listening to, all of those all of the notes that are being played, so you can go and play it yourself, whatever you can think of, the different layers of that can be transposed, in various mediums to you via that technology. And that exists now. We're not talking about something in the future that can be done now. It's just about cost. That's all it's about.
Well, I noticed, I don't know if it was real or not. I didn't do the research into it, but apparently Apple have patented a new type of earbud that actually picks up on all your body, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your temperature, and it's why is it doing that? Maybe because, like so much stuff in science, they're going, let's see if we can, rather than going, should we?
Yep. Yeah, and I've seen that as well, and it brings all sorts of scary issues with it, but it also opens up all sorts of possibilities. And you're right to talk about patents and those kinds of things, because whether that stuff emerges will come down to legality, will come down to whether there is a demand and whether we're ready. That's how technology's always gone. But it won't go away. It'll just be hidden for a while and come back again. I always go back to Pokemon Go. You know, the whole idea of, we saw Pokemon Go, it came, and everyone thinks, well, that was a load of rubbish. But it'll come again, and we will be playing Pokemon Go type games again and again and again in different ways. It will come again when we're ready for it in a different way. We'll be playing that type of game, you know. And sometimes the technology is not quite ready, or the legality is not quite ready, or people are not quite ready. So we'll see some of those things appear, but there will be legalities around it. Go back to the autonomous vehicle. The only reason that autonomous vehicles are not everywhere at the moment is due to all sorts of politics and legalities. Nothing to do with the fact that the technology doesn't work, because it does. So, yeah.
Oh, I heard a great story about autonomous vehicles. You know, I mean, San Francisco, I think it was San Francisco, you know, one of the big tech hubs where they're just driving around everywhere. You know, creative person decided to see if they could bring the tech, and all they did was get a white T-shirt, they painted a stop sign on their T-shirt, and just stood on the corner. Every autonomous vehicle just stopped. So they weren't even on the road. It wasn't even at the sign height. It was just there. So yeah, you know, the tech's there, but also I think the great humanness of, let's see if we can break the tech, is always there.
It'd be interesting to see what creative ways people come up with. I was in a session once where they said one of the biggest issues in Australia was that this is the only country in the world where regularly you have animals on the road that look remarkably like humans in terms of their size and structure. So that creates enormous issues, because you've got kangaroos, horses in Brombies, and cows and everything else. And so autonomous vehicles are only going to try and swerve from that and ultimately cause more carnage than they would anywhere else. And that doesn't happen in the rest of the world.
No, exactly. I mean, yeah, I see. I've got kangaroos on the front lawns at times, and so it's just like, oh, you know, trying to drive up the street at night, you just got to be so careful, because they.
Yeah. So how does an autonomous vehicle differentiate between a kangaroo and a person? I don't think it's quite equipped to do that. Maybe it is, but when, in Australia, it's not just a kangaroo. We've got X number of other creatures, you know, that could be on the road at any time.
Yeah, it depends where you are in the country, and a whole range of things. So we could talk for hours and hours and hours about this, I'm sure. And there was some stuff I was going to ask you, but we're just not going to get to it. But we've sort of covered it, and just about, you know, the way where education possibly is heading, but where we're heading as people. And it's been, I love the way you think about some things, and the way you look at it. And it helps me think about other things as well. But I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate your time. It's getting late now, and it's getting late in the term. So I'm sure you're almost just as weary as I am, if not more so, with all the extra stuff that you're doing. So a couple of quick questions just to wrap up, just a little bit of fun just to finish up. So first and foremost, I mean, everyone goes to the same, oh, what's your favourite coffee order? Okay, which is great. But across the board, what's your favourite drink?
Alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
Hey, it could be anything. It could be an Irish coffee, but
oh, you'd have to say Guinness in Ireland is like nothing else on earth. But you'd also have to say that a good Shiraz in McLaren Vale in South Australia is like nothing else as well.
I would have to agree with the Shiraz. I've not had the Guinness in Ireland, but I've definitely had the McLaren Vale Shiraz, among many. Now, I've been insulted in the past. I've got a favourite insult that someone's given me. But what's the best insult that you've received that you're proud of?
There's far too many to mention, Phil. If you were in the WhatsApp groups with some of my mates, you would see these on a daily basis, I can assure you. So none of them are repeatable on this platform, but yeah.
Well, we'll let that one. Let that one go to the keeper. So the next one. So you visited many, many countries. You've traveled the world a couple of times. What I was going to say, what's the country that you least want to visit, or what's the country that you've least enjoyed?
Least enjoyed. I actually didn't enjoy China at all, but that was, I think, was down to me. I wasn't ready for, and I think China's different now. This was pre-Beijing Olympics. China was not really, or the parts of China I went to, they hadn't really seen many Westerners, and I sort of wasn't used to, or I wasn't ready for I don't know, the reaction of the people. I don't know. I sort of, they wound me up a bit. It was the pointing, it was those kinds of things, which I don't know. I wasn't ready for that. It didn't bother me in other places, but it bothered me in China. I don't know why. And and I think it was the spitting. Which apparently doesn't happen anymore. But they were having a drive then to stop people spitting, and we're talking full-on spitting, not just everybody. And I was like, what is going on here? I think things like that upset me. But I come down to, I always look back at it and go, it's about being ready, isn't it? And I love India. I loved India when I was there, and I longed to go back. But I was ready for India. I was ready for the battle. I was ready for the attack on the senses. I was ready for the chaos. And I think sometimes when you go into a country, you've got to be prepared, or you've got to try and do your research and be prepared for either things that are going to happen which you don't expect, or being prepared that certain things, or expect certain things to happen. Either way, it's about your preparedness in itself. And I do, unless you're that type of person that just rolls with the punches, then I think that's just a characteristic of me. And so China was the one for me.
Well, I'm glad that they did a drive on getting rid of spitting.
That's bad.
That's gross. All right, now it is the Tattoo Teacher podcast. So, do you have any tattoos?
I have a few. All my tattoos except one were done on Venice Beach in California. So there you go. But I have one tattoo that I recently had a cover-up job because it was so badly done in the back streets of Leeds where I come from. So I had to have that redone. But all my other tattoos are from Venice Beach in California. So there you go.
There you go. Fantastic. Last question for the night is, we've talked about a lot. You've traveled the world. You've seen many things. You've given many, many keynotes. So where can people go to find more about you if they would like to?
So I have a website in nowfuturelearning.com. There's many free resources and all sorts of commentary on there. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, and I know that's not a comfortable space for a lot of people to play in. You have to dodge through the backslapping and the salesman and everyone trying to sell you every bot you can possibly imagine, and everything to do with AI and tech that you can't imagine. But it is a fertile space. It is a space where you can develop a quick network that you rely on, that's going to allow you to hang on to the coattails of what's happening in the world, and really has some interesting and diverse perspectives, and people so generous of their time and their insight and their knowledge, and not just in education or not just in schools, so wide and so varied. So find me on there, and also find me on that thing, that Twitter X thing, but why would you bother with that anymore?
I've stayed clear of that one. So.
Yes, that is a weird space now. So they're the two places, and I'm sure you can see my beautiful face in a variety of different places. But if you want to get in touch, then do so and come and connect. I'm always willing to share, and I'm always willing to have these discussions that make me think and make me crease my forehead a lot.
And once I learn how to put things in the show notes, I'll put all your links in there.
All right, mate. Good to see you, Phil.
Nico, again, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Great to chat with you, and we'll talk again real soon.
See you later, mate.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Tattooed Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your network. Special thanks to DJ Fruit Salad for the music. You can find more of his work on Instagram at DJ Fruit Salad Official. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Stay cool, be blessed.